Number 1.
This is a story about my parents that took place when I was around 3 to 4 years old. I'm now 21. They would fight a lot, and I seriously mean a lot. If it wasn't screaming matches, it was worse, as my dad was, and still is, a violent drunk, although I don't keep in contact with him much anymore. I remember a majority of their fights, but this one stuck out the most and has remained fresh in my mind, since everyone in my family, apart from me and my mum, refuses to even acknowledge that it happened. They are very one-sided and are pretty biased against my mum for stupid reasons. I'll shut up about those stuff though. It was late at night, and my brothers were staying at my aunt's house to play with my cousins. I was an extremely timid and sickly kid. I have a problem where, if I'm scared, my nose will pour out blood from stress. That, and bad separation anxiety regarding my mum. It was better that I stayed home with her. My dad was also out with friends, which translated to at the bar. My mum and I were just watching a movie in my bed, falling asleep, when the door basically crashes open. It startled my mum, so we rushed to see who it was, but I'm pretty sure she knew it was my drunk dad, because I could hear her getting angry about him being so loud and scaring me as soon as she left the room. He yelled back, as usual. It went back and forth for a while. My dad growing increasingly louder, and my mum telling him to please keep it down, as she didn't want to fight because I was trying to fall asleep. He became even more angry, and I could hear things being knocked over. I saw them fight a lot, but honestly, my dad terrified me, and my brothers weren't here to keep me calm like they usually were. I feel like I should also mention that we lived in a cane farm, Australia, at the time, and the closest neighbours were a little ways down the street. Otherwise, we were just surrounded by massive fields of sugarcane. I don't know how I did, but I managed to drift into sleep momentarily, despite the noise and how scared I was. Only for a moment though, because the next thing I knew, my mum burst back into my room. Her clothes were torn and she was crying and screaming. She ran over to my bed and I could see my dad entering the room behind her, something in his hand that I instantly recognized as a very large knife. By this point, I'm already scared out of my mind. My mum shields me, but I can see over her shoulder that he is making his way in, and he has the knife raised, leaping towards my mum. She practically throws me to the side of the room and turns to stop his hands. "Call the police, sweetheart. Call the police." I will never forget the fear in her voice, and it fucking sends chills down my spine to this day. I ran as fast as I could past my dad and grabbed the phone, which was right outside in the hall. Starting to dial, I felt hands grab me and my mum yell for him to leave me alone. He turned around, towering over me, fuming with rage that I had even tried to call for help. He always said that he would never hurt me. He hated my mother but would never hurt me, something a parent shouldn't need to say. By the time he faced towards my room to see my mum, she had already run out and thrown me over her shoulder, frantically dashing to the front door. My nose had started bleeding from fear now, which only made me panic and cry more. With me slung over her shoulder and blood pouring down my face, she still tried to assure me that it will be okay, that she will not let anything happen to me, and to just close my eyes. I held them shut for what seemed like forever, but I was terrified. I could hear her words becoming more panicked and feel her trying to run faster, trying to blurt out, "Mummy," to ask what was going on, between sputtering blood out from my lips, trying to keep it out of my mouth. I opened my eyes. We were down the street running towards my nearest neighbour's house, endless tall cane fields on both sides. My dad was chasing us, running, knife still in hand, and he was getting closer. I screamed, with which my mum veered right into the field to try and cut through or just get out of his sight. After 10 seconds or so of ducking into the field, she lifted me over her shoulder and hid me amongst the cane stalks. Squatting down trying to keep her breath steady, she held me, wiping the blood away from my face. I remember her whispering that everything will be okay, that I'll be fine, that she loves me, and to stay down and be quiet. I begged for her to please stay. I didn't want to be alone, but she was crying and assured me that I'll be okay if I stay here. Reluctantly, I covered my mouth and nodded as she stood up, leaving the field. I have no idea what happened while I was hiding. All I heard was distant screaming, and it felt like an eternity. The entire time I sat crouched, and I couldn't help but think that this would be the last time I would ever see my mum. She was going to die, and despite my dad saying that he would never hurt me, my dad was going to find me, and I was going to die too. My nose was running with blood, and it covered all over me, and became too much, and eventually I passed out. As I woke up in hospital, like the few other times this happened, I was very confused. Remembering everything that happened, I started to sob, thinking the worst. But with my cries, appeared my mum from behind the hospital room door. She had a lot of stitches on her face and multiple bandages and bruises on her body. I cannot recall any other moment in my life where I felt so much relief, without even really understanding what that feeling was. In summary, my mum left my dad immediately after that, and I rarely ever saw him again. When I did, he terrified me. She still won't tell me exactly what happened while I was alone in the field. He did not go to jail or suffer any form of punishment for what he did other than losing his kids, which I guess is a punishment in itself. He had tried to assault her multiple times afterwards, up until 4 years ago, and stalked us no matter how many times we moved houses and showed up at our door, my school and my work. He still tries to contact me. I stopped responding 3 years ago, but still messages me. I refuse to see him again, as he only ever ends in grief and him being violent. My relationship with my mum is strong though, and I can proudly say that she is my best friend, and I'm thankful that I have her.
Number 2.
This happened last night and has thus far been the creepiest experience of my life, and I've had quite a few. Last night, I got a frantic call from my brother asking me to sleep over because he had to rush his girlfriend to the hospital, but their kid was already sleeping and they didn't want to alert her. This was around 9 PM and I was half asleep, but went over because they were in a crunch. They left to the hospital and everything seemed quiet. I double bolted the door and started to kind of fall asleep until I heard a guitar solo from underneath the window in the living room. I was sleeping on the couch. I can't sleep at this point and slammed the window shut, leaving the room to get incredibly hot since the air conditioner was broken. The guitar solo stops. I wait a bit and open the window. The guitar solo begins again. I close the window, stops. Open the window, begins again. At this point, I close the window and take my chances with the fact that the room is slowly turning into a boiler, and my skin was making its own blanket of sweat. I start to finally get to sleep. It's 1 AM at this point, when, boom, loud country music starts playing. It's not just any country music, it sounds like the kind that you would hear in a horror movie at some local gas station in the middle of nowhere, before things start to go downhill. I again wake up and wait until it stops at 2 AM, then finally sleep again. I then wake up to hear the doorknob jiggling and think that my brother and his fiancée got home, so I went back to sleep. I wake up out of nowhere with this feeling of panic and look above me to see a man standing there, staring down at me. He's a big guy and looks very out of it. I was disoriented from sleeping and didn't think clearly, so I sat up on the couch and asked who he was. In response, he said 2 different names and then he gave me his actual name. It was the landlord, who my brother often tells me horror stories about, and from what I gather, he doesn't seem completely mentally there. He was also very drunk. I asked him to please leave, but he kept mentioning that he was very drunk and to please not tell anyone that he didn't think anyone was home, which can't be true because he was aware of my shutting and opening the window and saw me walk into the house in the dark, but I couldn't make him out because it was pitch dark. I calmly kept telling him to leave while clutching my phone like it was going to act as a weapon. I explained that the kid was sleeping and he had to leave because he was being loud. Somehow this finally scared him away and he left, but I didn't know how he got in or how he left. Until I realized there was a door to his apartment down the steps. I wasn't familiar with my brother's house and couldn't even call the police with an address. I called my brother and begged him to come home while I waited at the door with a butcher knife. Then it hits me. This guy, from what my mom has told me, was always overly interested in their kid and my mum always found it uncomfortable. He was coming into the house to make sure that I was sleeping, and then he was going into the little girl's room. That's what my gut feeling says. When my brother got back, he woke up the kid and got her ready to go with him to the hospital, and was shaking as he was very upset. He told me that he called the landlord at 1 a.m. to tell him that I was sleeping over to watch the kid for them. This guy knew I was there and that the kid was there. He was very drunk, and I'm not sure what his plans were. When we all walked outside, he was in the dark and said hello to the kid in the creepiest voice imaginable. I was still in panic and booked it towards the car, but he stumbled after me and asked me how long I have been dating the kid. Like, she's 5 and I'm a 26-year-old woman. What the actual fuck? Who says that? I jumped in the car, and as soon as my brother finished buckling her in, my brother decided to start a fight with the guy, and I had to scream at him to get back in the car. So, I'm back home and plan to never go back to their apartment again, but I'm deeply concerned that this guy is living underneath them and has access to the kid. She's very shy and timid to make it worse, so I'm very worried about her. I wasn't scared for myself, but I had this gut feeling that he was making sure that I was fully asleep on the couch to then go down the hallway to her room and do God knows what.
Number 3.
A little background information. My dad and I have never really seen eye to eye. Not in an abusive manner or anything of that sort, but we clash to the point where an argument can erupt within a matter of minutes between us. My mum usually says there is no doubt that I'm his daughter. Anyways, this goes back to when I was around 17 or 18. We live in an okay town in the northeast of England. My town is quite literally divided by one main road, which separates the quiet family houses on one side and the drug-fueled abusive families on the other. You know the kind, the ones that have far too many children just for the sake of the money from the government, and yet they spend it on more alcohol than necessary. Well, one night, I was planning to spend the night at my friend's house, Sean and Josh. They were like brothers in a lot of ways. We would just spend our nights playing games that would make us sick with nostalgia. Such good times. The only thing was, they lived off of one of the worst roads in my town. My dad would usually drop me off on the night, and walking home the next morning was a breeze. This night, it got to about 2 a.m, and I genuinely didn't feel very well, and all I wanted was my own bed. So, I called my dad to see if he could come get me. I knew he was up. He spent many nights fishing, which usually meant he'd be home any time between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. So, my dad says to me that he'll walk over and bring our 2 big dogs with him, because the car is still full of his fishing equipment and it'll be a while before he could drive over. He explains to me that he'll call me back in a few minutes after he's put the leads on the dogs and to let me know when to set off. After about 20 minutes, there's still no call from my dad. So, I figured he's most likely left his phone at home and he's already waiting at the corner of the street for me. No big deal, I'll set off. So, Sean and Josh are half asleep, but they keep saying, "We don't mind walking you, honestly, it's fine." All of that said in between yawns. I let them know that I'll be absolutely fine, it's literally like 2 minutes up on one road. I pop my shoes on, grab my bag, and head out. As I was walking, I was trying to untangle my headphones. Just as I get them untangled, something in my head is like, just don't bother with them. I had this weird gut feeling. So, I rounded the corner to this long road that leads home. This road is the awful road I mentioned earlier. Off of this road is a lot of long streets where the not so nice people live. Not all of them are horrible, but I'd say 80% of them are. I passed one particular street and noticed a group of men down the bottom, drunk and possibly on God knows what, all shouting at each other. But yet again, they were quite far away, so I didn't get too worried. About halfway up this long road, I could see the corner where my dad was supposed to be at this point. I heard panting and running behind me. My whole body tensed up and my immediate reaction was to grab my bag as tightly as possible, assuming whoever it was going to run past me and take it. But a few feet behind me, the running slowed to a walk. Suddenly, I heard a drunken man's voice behind me saying,
"Where are you going?"
Obviously I was startled and just replied with a quiet, "Home." I didn't really want to look at him and walked a bit faster. He started getting agitated with me and started shouting,
"What are you scared of? I'm walking you home."
So, I tried to keep calm and was sneaking my phone out of my pocket to call my dad, who was still nowhere in sight. I told him, "I'm not frightened, I'm just not very well. It's okay about walking me home, my dad is around the corner. Can't you hear the dogs?" And I tried to laugh it off a little, just to calm the situation. Next thing I know, this guy is dragging me behind an old police station, literally an abandoned police station, saying the most disgusting things to me, which really turns my stomach thinking about. I have no idea how, but I managed to kind of squeeze through his grip and run as fast as my legs would carry me. I phoned my dad and my dad hadn't even set off yet. I could hear him running and he kept telling me to stay on the line, he'd be there soon. I could hear this guy catching up behind me when I see my dad. I have never felt such relief in all of my life. My dad wrapped his arms around me, then held me by the shoulders, and I could see it in his eyes, he thought he would never see me again. Obviously, the cheeky little rapist man scarpered and disappeared within seconds. My dad walked me home as I tried to choke out what had happened, and he consoled me until we reached the front door. When we got back to the house, he started putting on his gloves and his coat and putting the leads on the dogs. I stood there, red-eyed, and asked him where he was going. His reply, very short and simple. "I'm taking the dogs for a walk." By this time, it was around 3 a.m, because it's obviously normal to walk the dogs at this time. I was worried, but seeing as though my dad was taking 2 German Shepherd crosses with him, I felt a little more relaxed. So, Dad goes out and about half an hour later comes back with a big smile on his face. I went into the kitchen and my dad was stood there at the sink washing his hands. He turns to me and says, "You're right, darling," still cheery as ever. I said very simply to him, "What have you done?" He replies with, "This guy, did he happen to have a cigarette behind his ear, with the beige trousers on?" I remember the trousers, but not the cigarette. My dad then looks at me and says, "Well, the cigarette's not there anymore." I started to get a bit confused and stammered out, "Wait, what? You found him?" And at this point, the concern came back into his face. He explained to me that when he found him, he was stood on that same corner that he attacked me at, like he was waiting for another young, naive girl to be walking by to do it to her too. In the end, my dad showed me his bloody knuckles and very calmly said, "Just don't tell your mother."
Number 4.
I'm a female college senior and this story happened in March of 2012. 2 of my friends really wanted to go and see the midnight premiere of The Hunger Games. I didn't really know much about it despite all of the hype, but I decided to go because movies are always fun, right? So, we head off to the theatre, which is about a mile walk from my dorm. We get there, enjoy the movie, and start walking back home. Since it's a pretty long movie, I'd say it was around 3 a.m. when we were walking back. Everything is going fine, and we're just chatting and walking down the sidewalk. Not long after we started our journey, we walked by a house with about 8 drunk college guys on the porch. They start catcalling and shouting things at us, trying to get us to come talk to them. I just kept looking forward and ignored them as I walked by. However, it seems to be physically impossible for my 2 friends to take shit from people, and they're both easily angered, confrontational and stubborn. So, of course, my friend Stephanie decides to shout some wise-ass insult to the guys as we walk by. Oh boy, she is now angered 8 drunk guys at 3 a.m. with nobody around. All of these guys leave the porch and start following us, shouting angrily. I'm a little afraid and hoping that the guys were just going to follow us for a few seconds to scare us. However, they kept at it, and a lot of their comments made it seem like they wanted to hurt us. Of course, my 2 friends start shouting more insults, which just antagonizes the guys further. My friend Liz is even saying, "I hope they try to fight us." At this point, I've pulled my cell phone out and I've already typed in 911 and I'm just waiting to hit the call button in the case that they try anything. Steph and Liz are busy pulling out pencils and pens and anything they can use to stab in case it comes to a fight. At this point, I have a pen in one hand and my cell phone in the other, and I really want my friends to stop shouting back at these guys, because we are getting closer and closer to my dorm and I'm afraid that they'll follow us in. You can't go into the dorms without a key fob, but it's easy enough to just wait until somebody opens the door and follow them in. These guys are getting closer and closer and sounding very frightening, so we fast walked into my dorm and quickly went inside. The guys just stared at us from the outside and walked past. I hurried to get us into my dorm so that they wouldn't know which one was mine. For some reason, Steph and Liz were so hyped afterwards and were saying things like, I wish they had tried something. I thought that was very, very naive of them, as there were 8 of them, but then again, I was just happy I hadn't peed my pants.
Number 5.
Just a little background check. I'm a female and was 12 when this all started, and I live in a very calm part of my state in Ireland. My mum is involved too, but not as much as I am. So, on to the story now. It was 12 AM and had just turned Christmas Day when we got a knock on our door. I was taught not to open the door to strangers, especially when it's 12 AM, so I just ignored it and hoped that whoever it was would just go away. About 3 minutes later, I heard another knock, but this time it was like a huge bang at the door, and I was terrified and didn't know what to do, so by instinct I went and got my mum to answer. When she answered, this drunk Romanian guy who had a very scruffy beard and was wearing a white hoodie was just standing there and asked,
Can I walk your dog? I have my dog with me, so she'll be fine.
And my mum of course said no. I was a bit away from the door, but that's all I heard him say. My mum kept asking politely for him to go away, and when she had enough, she closed the door on him. The next morning I was sitting having breakfast and my mum brings up the incident to my dad. So, me being me, I started eavesdropping and took off one of my headphones. This is what my mum said. I was really scared because that's the guy who stalks me in the bushes while walking Molly. Molly is our dog. When she said that, my heart sank so deep into my chest that it started to hurt. So, you think that's the end of it? No, it wasn't. Fast forward 3 years and I'm home alone watching TV upstairs in my room when I just had this sudden urge to look outside my window, and let me tell you, I was shocked. The same Romanian dude was standing in my empty driveway looking up into my bedroom. I got so freaked out and without hesitation immediately closed my curtains. No more than 10 seconds later, there was a huge bang at my front door and I hear the door handle being messed with. I was paralyzed with fear. When he finally stopped messing with the door handle, I heard the window downstairs shatter into shards and I heard him climb in. I sprinted into my bathroom and locked the door behind me, bringing my phone with me. I hear really fast thumps up the stairs and hear my bedroom door open, and once he realizes I'm not there, he immediately goes for the bathroom door handle. He starts trying to kick the door down and was screaming that he would rape me and kill me. I called 911 and within 5 minutes, thank God, I hear them coming and shout at the guy to put his hands up and get down. I was so terrified that it took me almost 30 minutes to get out of the bathroom. The officer told me that he had a backpack and in there they found dildos, condoms, a rope, a gag, bleach and a meat cleaver.
Number 6.
So, my first class is very early in the morning, 6:30 AM, and I'm usually at the bus stop right next to the mall by 6 something, since I walk there from my house. I was the only person there since I had arrived first, but I didn't really feel unsafe as there were different buses besides mine pulling up every 15 minutes or so. I sit down and start playing on my phone. I'm a 19-year-old girl and I was 18 at the time this happened. A man starts talking to me, startling me at first because I hadn't noticed him walking up to me. He's about my age, maybe a little older, shaved head and lots of tattoos. We make small talk, he asked me about my classes, etc. He seems to have an odd sort of personality, but nothing dangerous. I ask him if he's headed to school. He says he's waiting for someone. Another 5 minutes or so passes without incident. Then, another man approaches. I notice him right away because he's pulling along a cart. Not really a shopping cart, more like one of those half carts you take along to a farmer's markets and stuff, and it's rather noisy. Inside is a ratty, dull red sweatshirt and a few bottles containing various levels of alcohol. He's old, with long, unwashed hair, a dirty looking face, generally appears to be your average homeless drunk guy. "Hey, there's my friend," the guy sitting next to me says. He gets up, him and the homeless man do a sort of high five and begin speaking with each other. However, the older man is looking at me while talking to the younger man. Buses pull up, drop a few people off, but they don't really care because nothing was really happening at that time. The older man says,
"Who's your pretty little friend here?"
The guy explains that he just met me and that I'm a student going to school, etc. The old man sits down next to me, pulling his cart in front of him. At this point, I just feel kind of annoyed because he reeks of alcohol and BO and I just don't want to talk to him. He says,
"Nice skirt."
"Thanks," I say.
"It's so early in the morning. Isn't your little bottom getting cold on that stone bench?"
No, I'm fine."
"Come on. I don't want your nice little bottom to freeze off. Here, get up and I'll put my sweatshirt down, and you can sit on it."
He starts to grab his ratty old sweatshirt from his cart, and I'm a tough girl, but at this point I start to worry about his intentions and what he might do. Crazy homeless people is one thing, but this guy isn't going to actually touch me, right? "No, really, thank you, but I'm fine. I don't need your sweatshirt," I say to him, but he keeps mumbling about my cold bottom in that little skirt. Suddenly, he's grabbing at my skirt and trying to pull it up and off of me. I'm frantic and I look up at the younger guy for help, but he just has this creepy smile on his face. I push the creep's hand off of me and stand up, fix my skirt, and at that moment I see another bus coming towards the stop. It's not my bus, but I hurry onto it and get the hell out of there. The old guy and the other dude don't follow me onto the bus, but they wave at me happily as the bus drives away. Anyway, I ended up at some mall half an hour away and play hooky from school in the back store for the rest of the day. Incidentally, my boyfriend and I ran into this guy again at a store inside the mall next to the bus stop. I spotted him and quickly hid behind a rack of socks. The cashier noticed the guy and started screaming how he knows he's not allowed in that store. After he left, I told my boyfriend, but we decided not to confront him.
Number 7.
This is a story of a bunch of dumb teenagers who were tormented in the deep woods. Long backstory, but worth it. I was an 18-year-old high school senior and was about 3/4 of the way through the year. I had moved that year and switched to a school about 30 minutes away from where I used to go. I stayed in touch with a few people from my old school and got invited to go camping with a few of them over Memorial Weekend, which basically meant getting drunk as fuck in the forest. I invited 2 girls and 1 guy from my new school to come hang out for a night and met them in the closest town from the campsite about 40 minutes away. The guy, Jeremy, hopped in my car and the girls followed me up and we got to the campsite without incident. This campsite was 30 minutes away from any human signs of life outside of a shitty dirt road. The night started off fine, with everyone getting completely trashed and me beating one of the girls I brought named Sarah at beer pong, and she was very drunk and all over me. I guess to the 18-year-old version of me, that night couldn't have been going better at that point. At about 12:30 AM, things started to die down as half of us had already pooped and were heading in for the night, and I was way too drunk to even try and have sex with Sarah. A lot of the night is still a blur, but I still remember climbing into a tent, and there were 5 of us in it, 3 guys and 2 girls. At around 2:30 AM, I was awoken by the sound of a shotgun. I was still very drunk and had a hard time processing anything, but in my drunken state, I figured it was one of the people I was camping with being a dick. One of the guys, Brent, had stayed sober the entire night and had brought his shotgun up with him, so I figured it was him being a prick to everyone who was drunk. I checked my phone and go back to sleep. I fell asleep, and at what I think was around 3 a.m, I'm awoken by someone bawling their eyes out, and I'm still having a very hard time processing anything. After about 5 minutes of this, I realize it's Brent, and I stumble out of my tent followed by Jeremy, and I walk out and see Brent is bleeding profusely from his nose and mouth, and I run over to him, stumbling the entire time. I am then hit in the head with a rock and I'm knocked unconscious. Everything from this point forward is from Jeremy's point of view. Jeremy, to this day, is my best friend and has told me his version of the story many times. He says that I passed out by a tree and a large man lunges out and smashes my face with a rock. After hitting me, the man lunges at Jeremy and tackles him straight on his ass. Jeremy at the time was 5'8", 140 pounds, and he describes the man as at least 6'4" and 280 pounds. Jeremy is being choked to death by this wooden monster of a man, and he hears another gunshot from a pistol. Sarah had managed to find a pistol Brent had also brought with him and fired a shot, missing the man by a large amount, but it managed to startle him and he sprinted off into the woods. They just let him go, and Jeremy drove me and Brent to the hospital. I had 3 broken teeth and a severe concussion, and Brent had part of his tongue mutilated with a knife and a broken nose. Brent has never talked to me or any of the friends from that trip about exactly what happened when he was outside alone with the man, and refused to give the police much of a description. The man was never caught, and I've never been in a deep forest again. This was in 2005.
Number 8.
Walking home at 2 a.m. from the bar, 4-block walk along a main road to my house. When I first turned onto the street, I was a bit behind a single girl walking the same direction. I had my headphones in and drunkenly was singing and speaking lyrics from metal, and though she looked back a few times, I don't think she was freaked out until a specific song. I was on a song called Map of Scars, and was walking a tad faster than her, so I was catching up. Looking back, these were a few things she heard me say from approximately 12 feet behind her. Beneath their clothing hides a map of scars freakishly carved. While mother is away, the girls will play, the girls will play. Why should you go on living? You were born to feed the worms. Upon saying the last line aloud, she turned around and screamed, "What the fuck do you want?" I could hear over my noise-cancelling earbuds, and in my drunken state, and not understanding what had transpired, I smiled. In retrospect, probably looked creepy as fuck, and said, "Sleep," because, drunk and tired. At this point, she screamed, "Get the fuck away from me!" and then sprinted down the road and took the first cross street away. I laughed, which she probably heard and scared her even more, and thought she was just on drugs or something. Took me till the next morning to realise that metal lyrics plus night plus drunk was a frightening combination. Hey guys, it's that Grim Raider here. So, thank you very much for listening through that. I appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Come on, you've got to subscribe. I mean, you might as well just slap a like, just throw in a comment here and there, just because you can, really. I mean, nothing's stopping you from doing it, right? No, but seriously, thank you very much for listening through. If you want to listen to more stories like this, on the screen, you can click on either video, that's the 2 previous videos, or you can go in the description and there's also a link to the previous video. There's also a playlist link, which will lead you to a lot of videos very similar to this with hundreds of awesome stories like these. So yeah, with that, I leave you with, thank you very much, and you'll hear from me very soon.